Transitioning to another part of the world, General Welch, about 2 years ago, he said that Russia at the time mentioned the amount of times that Russia has violated NATO airspace, an old theater that you're very familiar with. Presently, in the past couple of months, even after Trump assumed the presidency, Russian jets have buzzed U.S. jets in multiple locations. Why do we keep letting this happen? Violate our airspace, buzz our jets. What do you think needs to be done about this?
I will answer that, but I want to clean up because I think we're going to
Sure.
shift gears, and I do want to take advantage of the advantage of being in New York City. This is my second time in New York City. My first time in New York City was on 9/12/01. I told you I was a helicopter pilot. We were doing an exercise in North Carolina, and I got the call it was direct orders from the Pentagon that were, take your 5 helicopters and go help Americans. That was my mission set. So we flew up to McGuire that night and began operations the next day. And really interestingly, I fly pretty big helicopters, and we were trying to figure out how we're going to get into New York City, a fairly congested area. And some of our pilots had previous experience landing smaller helicopters, Hueys, on the USS Intrepid. And so we went through, a rigmarole of finding out the curator, probably not the right term, but the curator was a retired Marine Lieutenant General Marty Steele. And I called him up and asked him if, I told him who I was, what I was here to do, and we didn't really have a mission set other than to figure out how to go help. And he said, when are you coming? And I said, as soon as you can be ready. He goes, give me 45 minutes, we'll clear the deck. So again, it's a museum, obviously, so he had to move some stuff out of the way. And we came in and landed there on the Intrepid. And from there, we picked up New York City Police Department, Fire Department, emergency management officials, Port Authority, for their first aerial kind of reconnaissance of the
When
area.
the 5 helicopters are coming in, you're in one of the helicopters, and you see the smoke coming up.
Yeah.
What are you thinking at that? What are you thinking at
It was absolutely surreal. I mean, well, you all know. I probably felt the same thing you all did. Although I'm not from New York City, but it was you really couldn't grasp it. And we took all those men in the air who hadn't slept, obviously, and are trying to ascertain where fires are, where potential routes in or out could be, because you couldn't just get it from a ground perspective. Where potential maybe living space could have been. Of course, this was very early on, and we ended up strapping. I asked them, well, what would be helpful, and we need cameras that could see through walls, maybe see where some space are, see where hot spots are. We ended up taking security forces cameras from McGuire Air Force Base, putting them on a mount underneath our helicopter that were attached with cables to a mission computer set that we have in these helicopters that we could videotape, and we could move, with a slew of a stick. And then we flew over top, and they were able to drive the camera and film it, and we could. This is VCR days. This is before, back in VCR time. And then we just made a videotape and VCR of that, and that was our contribution. I wanted to get to that point just before we moved on, because having been part of that on 9/12, 9/13, 14, several days that we were here, and then I was really blessed to be kind of a completion of a circle, to be in the White House that day on May 1st of 2011. And since this is my first time back in New York City since that event, I mean, that's just really kind of poignant to me. So,
Did it feel, because for many of us in New York City at the time and across the nation, it was a bizarre, when you walk around New York City, you will a lot of times see commercial aircraft constantly flying over. It's congested. You got Newark, you got LaGuardia and Kennedy Airport. Was it a surreal experience for you, not seeing any commercial flights? I mean, everything grounded for a couple of days, except a couple of F-16s just circling and going back and forth over Long Island and around New York City.
Oh yeah.
What was the feeling like for
Well, it
you
was
in
bizarre.
the United States?
Yeah. I was at Fort Bragg, and of course everything was immediately grounded, like you said. It took us. We got the orders to go, like I said, go help Americans. It took us 7 hours to get clearance to take off. It wasn't until nightfall. I mean, obviously, everyone was on kind of a hair trigger. We weren't sorting out what was happening. Everything was grounded. We didn't take off till probably, I think, 8 or 9 o'clock that night, and we flew direct. We flew right over the top of Washington. Controllers that are usually, as you know, on the eastern seaboard are very busy. Air traffic controllers in this part of the world were bored and talking to us the whole time, wanting us to know what we could see, how was it going, because they weren't controlling anything but handful of helicopters and the F-16s.
But was it bizarre just not seeing anything
Oh,
else
yeah.
as you're flying in the air? Nothing in
Nothing.
the United States. It's one thing to be in a war zone overseas and stuff, but in the United States, going up the coast, not seeing anything in the air.
Yeah, it was very bizarre.
So pivoting to Russia.
Yeah, sorry.
No, this amazing story. Thank you very much for sharing. Pivoting to Russia. Tell me, how long do you think this goes on for? Russia buzzing our aircrafts. What is the remedy for it?
Well, I think again, my personal opinion is, while it is an irritant, and you could argue a very high irritant, this buzzing of ships, aircraft that are in the vicinity, it's done with. There is a palpable sense of boundaries. There is control. There is, it may not be something that we like and that we would authorize, but it is done with a sense of we know what they're doing.
What is the point? What is the Russian standpoint with it? Do they want to be embarrassed like what happened with Turkey, one of their aircrafts being shot down and being humiliated? What is the point of them keep buzzing U.S. ships, U.S. ship in the Black Sea or other places? What's the point?
Russia is not happy with the state of play of NATO expansion, NATO influence on their borders. From a Russian perspective, we are the ones being provocative by having brought in, for instance, the Baltic nations. NATO has just moved to bring Montenegro, which is, of course, Slavic.
But by them doing it, doesn't it make us want to bring in more nations and expand NATO more? Doesn't it give us more fuel and others more fuel to enlarge NATO as a result of the Russia's provocative actions?
Yeah, obviously, from our perspective, that's exactly what's happened. We've seen NATO budget increases, modest though they may be. There's been a unique kind of closing of the ranks with respect to opinions on a lot of things that NATO is frequently divided on. But I think Russia is confident, and there's plenty of evidence that they can point to that I would have to acknowledge is true, that they think that they can drive wedges between key nations. 28, 29 nations to get all march in a single direction and have a single voice, a very difficult chore. And a lot of these nations that are now NATO nations have historic ties with Russia, or at least the Slavic culture, and Russia, from an information warfare standpoint or a hybrid warfare, if you combined a bunch of elements together, they are doing a heck of a job with respect to information operations, and we need to be a lot more serious about this from my perspective.
And explain to me, when you say information operations, give me an example or two.
Well, RT is. I don't know if you've ever watched Russia Today television, but that right there is the case in point. If you watch that, you see anchors that are that you would recognize that were former anchors from CNN or MSNBC or what have you. In other words, they're speaking English with American accents, giving news that is exactly 180 degrees out from what you would hear on U.S. television or BBC or something like that. It is very professionally done. they are flooding. And I'm just picking one aspect, media, news media. But you have Russian-speaking populations in NATO, nations in NATO that are getting nothing but this type of piece. And Estonia is a great case in point. And that's just one aspect.